Jump up in the air. Jump up, don't be scared.
Screw you, asshole!
What? Oh my god.
Oh boy, it's time for Microsoft to embarrass themselves once again. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Oliver. God had a vision, and that vision was me. Now to say Xbox haven't been very good lately is an understatement. Honestly, the Xbox One will probably go down as one of the worst consoles in history. It doesn't even make a good doorstopper because it's so fucking big. After they decided to release all their games on PC, I have absolutely no reason now to own one, and I certainly won't be buying the next one. Now considering I have absolutely no standards and I've got a while till Sekiro comes out, I thought I'd do what any rational human would do. I played Crackdown 3. Before I get into Crackdown 3 though, I've got something I need to get off my chest. You've heard throughout this entire generation people say, what the fuck are Microsoft doing and man Xbox really need to step it up, but no one seems to really understand why they're so massively incompetent. Except for me. But before we get into this generation, I think it's important that we start at the beginning. It was March 14th, 2002, and you'd just gone out and bought an Xbox with a ridiculously large power brick along with a copy of Halo Combat Evolved. Maybe you took a day off work or school. You sat there all cozy in the darkness of your room. You plugged it in, you turned it on, and for the first time in your life, you experienced it. Everything about Halo Combat Evolved was genius. It was so genius that every game after it tried to copy it. Most companies that try to enter this industry fail. Microsoft just knocked it out of the park in their first attempt. Then they'd go on to do this multiple times. Halo 2 is one of the most beloved games ever made thanks to the countless hours people spend in its multiplayer. How did we get from to... Well, even though the Xbox 360 was the better console when it came out compared to the PS3, Xbox never really had any developers. The only big companies they owned were Bungie and Epic Games. Bungie of course went off to go make Destiny, and Epic left to go make some little indie game you've probably never heard of it. Fight or something? I don't know, it's probably okay. The 360 only prospered due to games like Mass Effect and Dead Rising, games Microsoft had nothing creatively to do with. Sony on the other hand were thinking long term. If you go back and look at the PS2, you'll notice there are more games for the PS2 than there are for any other console in history. This is because Sony just said, fuck it, and open the floodgates. Anyone could publish a game for the PS2. There was no quality control. They did this because they were looking for developers. The best example I can use is Guerrilla Games. This no-name group of Dutch developers went to Sony and pitched to them the idea of a game called Killzone. Sony said, yeah okay then, and gave them a bunch of money to develop the game. Due to the game's success, Sony bought the company as they saw the guys are damn talented. Guerrilla Games recently just developed Horizon Zero Dawn, which everyone loved. Sony did the same thing with Naughty Dog and most of their other developers because they were looking for talent so that when they get to where they are now, they are consistently putting out blockbuster games. Xbox however didn't do this, so when they did lose Bungie and Epic Games, they had nothing. Of course there is more to it than Xbox not having any good developers. The company since the beginning has been massively incompetent. You had the launch of the 360 where half of them didn't work, and the Xbox One has to be the worst way I've ever seen anyone reveal anything.
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Xbox One.
TV experience. TV. TV and movies. TV. Xbox. Watch TV. 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 Watch TV. TV. TV and TV remote. TV experience. TV. 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 Sports TV. TV. TV.
What I mean is that even when they have something that could be good, they'll find a way to fuck it up. That's Xbox in a nutshell. They can't help but get their greasy fucking hands on everything. My favourite example to use is Insomniac Games, but keep in mind this is just a theory. Insomniac have always been a PlayStation company. They most notably made the Spyro and Ratchet & Clank games. When the Xbox One came out, they developed an exclusive for it called Sunset Overdrive, which was published by Microsoft. But the interesting thing was how they immediately jumped back to Sony after the game was released. There was this fairly cold tweet regarding a question about the new Spider-Man coming to Xbox. I don't know if Insomniac hated working for Xbox or not, but there are multiple examples of this. The Dead Rising series died as soon as it became an Xbox exclusive. Same with Crytek when they came out with Rise. Oh, don't tell me you forgot about Rise Son of Rome. It was a masterpiece.
Wrong.
Everything Xbox touches dies because it can't keep its fucking hands off everything. Sony has so much confidence in their studios that Santa Monica can be like, "Hey Sony, can we develop a new God of War? Sure, how long is it gonna take? About 5 years. Okay, we'll check back in like 6 months. Good luck." Microsoft are constantly messing with the creative process of everything they publish. Look at Sea of Thieves. It took 5 years to make, yet there are 5 things in the game. How the fuck do you even do that? And that leads us to now, when Microsoft have realized the ship is sinking and they need to do something about it. Everyone celebrated when they announced that they bought a bunch of studios, most notably Ninja Theory and Obsidian, while I sat there terrified. Everything Obsidian touches turns to gold. They literally can't make a bad game, but now I'm afraid they might die a horrible death thanks to partnering with Xbox. We're certainly not going to get another Pillars of Eternity. Could you imagine playing that with a controller? It'd be like piloting an aircraft with no arms. Of course I don't know what's going to happen, but what I do know is that if Xbox are smart, they'll let them do whatever they want, but judging by their track record of buying companies, I don't have much confidence. Now, Crackdown 3. This is most likely the last game to come out of this horrible generation Xbox are having, so we can sort of see Crackdown 3 as this cherry on top. Everything I just said about Xbox can be applied to this game, but this one's a little special. The game has been in development for 5 years and was originally supposed to come out in 2016. It's now 2019. You know what this means. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another episode of What the Fuck Are We Doing? The game was being developed by like 4 companies, which in the end came down to 1, which was Sumo Digital. The last thing Sumo Digital developed was Snake Pass, which was this fun little physics-based puzzle game where you play as a snake. Do you see the issue here? How did the developers of Snake Pass end up developing a new AAA video game for Microsoft? If you didn't believe me when I said Microsoft have no companies before, you certainly do now. So, after that's all said and done, and after spending more time in this game than I'd like to admit, what did I think of it? Well, it's kind of bad. It's not that Crackdown 3 does anything very badly, it's more just like it doesn't do anything. Every single aspect of this game is outdated. In a way, it feels like the Crackdown 2 we should have gotten in 2010. Problem is, it's now 2019, where you can literally simulate space by putting a box on your head. Now, I think it's important to note that I was there in 2007 when the original came out, and it was great. Picking up cars and throwing them was cool as shit, but it's not anymore because everyone's done it. We are now in a generation where there are so many open world games that going back and playing an open world game from 2007 is painful. Also, it's important to note that I paid £2 for it for 2 months for Xbox Game Pass. The same deal was run in America for $2. Just so you know, I didn't actually spend any money on this, so it's not really a huge loss. Anyway, Crackdown 3, go! If you're like me, the first reaction you'll give after gazing upon the open world is... The game not only plays like it's from 2010, but also looks like it. To be fair, from a high spot looking over the open world, it doesn't actually look that bad. I quite like this mix of colours and lights. They have captured this over-the-top corporately controlled city look they were going for. The issue with Crackdown 3's visuals is when you get anywhere near it. There is a lack of polish on pretty much all of the textures, the buildings, the water, everything looks outdated and rushed. This is the only part of Crackdown 3 that I don't have an answer for. I can't figure out why it looks as bad as it does. My guess is that the game was rushed after spending so long in development. The world, while from a distance doesn't look that bad, I couldn't tell you one memorable section from it. It's incredibly bland. Even the giant buildings and bases that are obviously designed to be scaled by an agent are just so damn lazy. The sound design is pretty basic, guns don't have this loud realistic feeling making them feel underpowered, explosions are also fairly underwhelming. It also doesn't help that the enemies just drop to the floor like a ragdoll with no bones. The city itself feels dead, mostly due to the lack of civilians and care that's gone into each area. There are so many enemies and industrial sites that I consistently forgot I was even in a city. You're jumping around a big bombastic world that's obviously designed to be your playground. The issue with not caring about making the city feel alive is that at the end of the day I don't give a shit about saving anyone. I'm only doing this to blow stuff up. Crackdown 3 doesn't take itself seriously, so the tone isn't an issue. The reason I'm pointing this out is because you still need to make your city not feel like a barren wasteland. I noticed throughout my playthrough that there are a lot of design choices that really only exist in games that have trouble processing the open world efficiently. There are basically no NPCs on the streets and vehicles despawn when you walk like a street away from them. What's next? Oh, the music. The music is phenomenal. I'm not actually joking, it's great. This loud club-style soundtrack fits the game pretty well and is honestly one of the best soundtracks I've heard in a while. It's just a shame that that's pretty much the only positive thing I can say about the game. Bet you're all glad you bought an Xbox One X so you can play Crackdown 3 in 4K.
So there you are, my poor little agent. I feel awful about the accidental crash of your dropship, but Terra Nova announced that there were no survivors. And since I can't have our customers doubting my integrity, you can't be alive.
Alright, so here's Crackdown 3's story. A big evil corporation named Terra Nova is doing bad things in order to take over the world and you have to stop them. There are no twists or turns, it does not progress past this point. There is barely any writing here is what I'm saying. The world building is almost non-existent. The game basically just does the bare minimum in order to get you into the action as quickly as possible. And I'm fine with this. You don't need story in these kind of games. The developers probably said why bother wasting the player's time when the main selling point is blowing shit up. Crackdown 1 had no story and it was fine. The world, however, is a little more important. If I'm interested in the world, then blowing stuff up becomes much more engaging. Crackdown 3's entire concept is that you start from the bottom of the hierarchy and work your way up to the top by killing the lieutenants. After killing them all, I don't remember a single one, except for the emoji villain. Yes, I'm not joking, it's real. It would have been a lot cooler if these characters were somewhat established and weren't just some icon on a map. Not even the main boss is a character outside of, I'm evil and I'm going to take over the world. Terry Crews is in the game and he's fine I guess. He's only really in it for the first cutscene, although you can play as him. The best way to sum up Crackdown's world is that it was done way better by the Saints Row series years ago. Saints Row's comedy was witty and well executed, whereas Crackdown's falls flat and is pretty cringy.
Eat lead.
What you see is what you get. Every aspect of Crackdown 3 is completely uninspired. I think the reason for the combat feeling underwhelming is that if you've ever played Just Cause, then this is going to feel very old. Crackdown goes for the same chaotic mess of explosions that Just Cause is famous for, but Just Cause does it much better. The shooting in Crackdown is just okay. It's not chaotic enough to be engaging, there isn't really any design to it. The game uses an ancient lock-on system that basically turns the game into a mind-numbing pattern of holding down the left trigger and then the right trigger. If you went full on crazy with the chaos similar to Just Cause and maybe added gore or something, this could have actually been fun. There was a boss fight in this game where enemies were flying at me from all sides while I was trying to scale buildings, shit was blowing up everywhere and the music was just like...
Hey, got infantry drones on the way.
During this I suddenly realised, hey, this is kind of fun. But after the boss fight was over, it goes right back to the same boring shooting. Changing the difficulty doesn't help this either, since the combat doesn't have any design to it. The game attempts to add depth with a large variety of weapons and elemental damage. Problem is, the laser is the best weapon by far, and no enemy in the game is immune to burning, so there goes that. All the enemy types don't require their own unique strategy, all of them could just be blown up, further making the combat mind-numbing. The gameplay of Crackdown never gets any more interesting than this. The game never progresses. You'll be doing this repetitious pattern for about 8 hours until you beat the game and wonder why you bothered. I know I certainly did. That's 8 hours of my life I'm never getting back. It's time to talk about the only thing Crackdown is known for. The progression system. Similar to the first game, you start off as a basic agent who can't jump very high and doesn't do much damage. But the more you use certain skills, the better they'll become. By the end of the game, you'll basically be Superman. You're able to leap across buildings and slaughter everything easily. To be honest, this still holds up as being fairly cool. The issue with the progression is that it doesn't really matter. In the first game, there were certain areas that you couldn't get to as you couldn't jump high enough. Or maybe they were too difficult for your current level. This made progression feel rewarding, as going back to that one base that kicked your ass and just bulldozing through it was satisfying. You'll never have this feeling in Crackdown 3. Every area is accessible and easily beaten from the beginning of the game. Throughout the world, you'll find the DNA of different agents that if you collect will allow you to play as them. Each agent has different specializations, meaning one agent might give you more driving XP and another might give you more shooting XP. Thanks to the progression being an afterthought, selecting what agent you want to play as pretty much doesn't matter. Driving is useless in this game as jumping from building to building is the most efficient way of traveling. They do have the transforming cars from the other games, including a tank, but I never used it as just melting everyone with a laser beam is much quicker and most areas can't be reached with vehicles. So Terra Nova is split up into 4 different sections, each with 1 boss and 2 lieutenants. In order for these enemies to come out of hiding, you need to go around the map to their own little bases and complete them. This usually involves pressing a button or blowing something up. Does this sound familiar? Sounds like every open world game ever made, doesn't it? All of these areas play exactly the same and are therefore mind-numbingly boring after the first 5. Most of the time you can just ignore whatever enemies are there and complete the objective. The bosses themselves are exactly what you'd predict them to be, incredibly bland and lazy. Most of them have no design whatsoever, no attacks to look out for or strategy. Most of them are just big robots that you shoot about 10 times with a rocket launcher and they die. Even the last boss is pretty much the same. There is a small neat idea in here where you can go attack the main boss straight away, but if you haven't taken down their subordinates, the path to them becomes harder. The issue is that it really isn't difficult and I only discovered this because I accidentally killed the main boss before one of the lieutenants simply because my mind was on autopilot. I just walked to the nearest icon on my map. Even though there are no main missions in the game, and all of it is basically side stuff, the actual side stuff is horrible. Really, there is only one side mission in the game if you don't count the collectibles. That side mission is the absolute perfect example of developers not knowing what to do for side content. Yes everyone, you guessed it, races. Does anyone actually enjoy this stuff? Has there ever been an open world game where you got excited about the thought of racing through hoops? No, there hasn't. Stop fucking putting this stuff in games. Now the game does have a multiplayer mode, but that's about all I can say about it. Remember like last generation where every game felt like it needed a multiplayer mode, so of course the result of this was the multiplayer feeling incredibly tacked on? That's how I'd describe Crackdown 3's multiplayer, although somehow they made it worse. Have you ever played Half-Life 2 Deathmatch on some crazy custom map with 64 players where you die about every 2 seconds? That's the design of Crackdown 3's multiplayer. Now I have played the multiplayer, but when I went back in to get footage I was unable to find a match, and it's honestly not surprising that the game is dead on PC already. The destruction is laughable, it's just simple physics-based destruction that's in every game despite being marketed as this brilliant idea and how they use the power of the Xbox Cloud. If this is the power of the Xbox Cloud, then Microsoft might be even worse than I thought they were. I could go into design, but I mean just look, the lock-on system from the campaign is in here. Just why?
Overall, Crackdown 3 is slightly more competent than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be a complete train wreck. Its biggest issue is that it's 10 years too late. 4 out of 10. It does absolutely nothing special, but yet at the same time doesn't do anything necessarily terrible. It's a game that doesn't need to exist. It probably only exists because Microsoft cancelled Scalebound and couldn't afford to cancel another game. The multiplayer is abysmal. I played so little of it that I'm not even going to factor it into the main score. Let's just pretend it didn't exist. The game has no design to it. There's no risk taking involved. I'm done. Microsoft, fix your shit. And don't fuck with your new studio.